Hey everybody, what is up? It's Devin, LaVore, and
Michelle LaVore
coming at you from the mountaintop.
Yeah.
Because that's where we've been. We haven't done a video since a week ago today.
Yeah.
It's like, man, the Lord has been doing amazing stuff. For those of you who have been following us for a while, you know the Lord, every once in a while, He pulls us away. Mm-hmm. And it's like that whole, hey, come on, disciples, come away with me. And He just speaks amazing things. You know, you can see it in the scripture. That's basically what's been happening with us. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to share a little bit of that with you today.
Yeah.
So welcome. That's our welcome, right?
Yes.
You do the welcome?
Yes.
Okay. And also, we want to give a huge thank you to those who support us as we're doing what we're doing and on this amazing journey with the Lord. And we are a support-based ministry channel. So if you feel led to support us, we have a PayPal link below. And we greatly, greatly appreciate every amount given with highest praise that you don't even see. Yeah. So, but the PayPal link is below, and we appreciate it, guys. Thank you for everything. And so, so where have we been, Michelle? Where have we been?
Well, like you said, we've just been kind of in this place of being on the mountain, and it started last week. You know, we kind of left off with our last video talking about kind of the beginning of the week. Week 18, and just the bondage and praising the Lord, and how, like, with, you know, Paul and Silas in the jail, like, they were singing praises and bondages were falling off. Well, and
also Jesus was outside the door,
yes, exactly,
getting ready to knock, but he's like, ooh, what am I going to hear when I come up on the door? What's going on in there? Ooh, I hear some faith. Ooh, I hear some praise. Mm-hmm. You know?
Exactly. And so we made that video, but then the following days, God was really speaking to us, the number 29. And so 29 can do with departure. It also can do with mountains. And we really felt like the mountains was what God was really highlighting. Yeah. And there were other things that God brought in that had to do with mountains and departure and all of this. And so we were just like, okay, where are we at? And we started getting just pictures and from the Lord about being up on the mountain with Him. Yeah. We're reminded of Abraham going up on the mountain. So many examples. We literally spent one of our God times just talking about lots of different mountain pictures and how the Lord was using that. But I really felt like on the 29th of April God was like, hey, you're in this mountain place. And so for us also,
on the 29th?
Yes, it was on the 29th.
Oh, okay, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, day one of our mountain time has been where the Lord was just like, all right, I want you to just kind of leave everything else, you know, set aside, you know, these things, just the schedule and things, just let me just work with you and really speak to your hearts as a family.
You want to set us aside again?
I know, like,
again?
we get going, and then it's like, okay, now lay that down. It's like, all right, Lord, you're in charge, not us.
That's right. That's what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
And so it's just been interesting because for us over the last week so far, our God times have just been they've really felt like a conference. Pretty much every morning we're like, this feels like a conference because the Lord is speaking, and then we have a little break, and then the Lord keeps speaking, and literally will be like all morning long. Like God is just speaking to different things to our family and to us individually, and it's just like, wow, this really feels like we're at some sort of conference, and that's really kind of what the mountain.
And it's lasted a lot longer than a weekend.
Yeah, no, it's been a whole week, and I believe it's just going to keep continuing.
Yeah, it's going to go on for a little bit.
And so, but it's like, well, what is the whole point of a mountain? Well, going up the mountain was just this time, you know, we see where God reveals His glory. He really is revealing Himself and His heart, but He can also be revealing who you are as a person. Like with Moses, that was one of the examples. It was like Moses went up, he was up on the mountains, and then there's the burning bush. And it was this encounter he had with the Lord that God was really showing him, hey, this is who you are. You might not think that you're this person. And what was that? It's like, well, I want you to deliver my people. Your life was for this reason, and I have this great calling I have for your life.
Yeah.
Do you want to step into it? And so it was just kind of this idea of like where God is up here and he's really just doing a lot for our hearts, but it's also very much linked with the destiny that God has over our life and how he's moving in each of our lives, not just ours but our children as well.
Yeah.
And just kind of bringing out like, hey, do you remember these things? This is what I'm speaking over you. This is what I'm saying over your life. And so it's been very intense, but it's been just truly amazing.
Not in a bad way, intense. Not
no.
like triple
Just,
four
but
intense.
like,
although
those have been triple fours. let's remind you.
Yeah. Those have been there too. This is who you are, but also let me remind you of the things that hinder who you are.
Yeah. But that kind of goes with the breaking off bondages. And so we've been just in this time where God's just like, hey, come away with me to the mountain. Come away and let me reveal who you are, but also who I am in your life. And you see that like God, revealed his glory to Moses. Jesus went up on the mountain with a few of his disciples, and he was transformed, and they saw his glory.
On the mountain.
And so there's just even with Elijah, he's in the cleft of the rock, but God's like, I'm going to reveal, that's Moses. But he does reveal his glory as well to Elijah. And so it's all these examples where God is like,
with Elijah, he does it twice.
Yeah.
With the fire that consumes, and then he goes up the mountain, further up the mountain, and bends down and prays 7 times, and then boom. There's a release from the bondage of the 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Bookmark that. 3.5 years of no rain.
The drought.
Yeah.
And so so God just had us on here, and some of the things that he's really highlighted to us is one, while we've been up on the mountain, God's like, I've been working on your hearts. And in particular, it's this idea of building the walls of your heart. Restoring. We're in this time where God says the play has started, and it's a play of restoration.
Yeah.
And God's like, I am restoring hope right now. That's one of the things that he's spoken over this literal, like right now, time that we're in. Is I'm speaking hope and I'm speaking restoration to really our hearts. And that was something God spoke on for, I think like it was like a whole day and a half, where it was just, he was really focusing in on restoring our hearts and repairing the breaches. He also gave the picture of like, if you're a pitcher but you have holes in it, he's getting ready to fill it. And so he wants to make sure those holes are filled in so you can contain and hold everything that he wants to do.
Even if they're very small. I mean, they're almost, you wouldn't even be able to notice it until the water's poured in, and then it's revealed.
Yeah.
God's like, I don't want to have that happen.
No.
I don't want to pour in and be like, ooh, man, you got a little area there. Ooh, you got a little, no one passing by would ever see it.
Yeah.
They would say, oh, wow, that's a great pitcher for water or something. I want to buy it. And the Lord's like, don't buy it. It's got some cracks and tears in it. Like, what? I don't see it.
Yeah.
But when you pour the water in and it starts leaking, you go, oh, I guess you were right.
Yeah. Yeah, because there are sometimes those tiny things, tiny cracks. And you're like,
areas.
wait, why is there water underneath this now that it's been here for a little while? It's like, oh, well, there's this spot. And so the Lord is really sharing that, and that's really kind of where some of these 444s have come in. It's like God's like, hey, I'm showing and exposing these areas that need some work, need patches. So invite me to just come in and patch up those places of your heart.
Yeah.
And so that's just been one of those areas that God has really covered, and just gave us great pictures with using Nehemiah and how the Lord restored the walls in 52 days, and just talking about, that's the other thing, it's an accelerated work of the Lord on the hearts of his people right now. And he's saying like, in this moment, in this time where really we're in, if you want to speak globally and nationally, we're in this break time, this time where it's like there is not the normal things going on in life that usually are happening. And it's like in this break, like, come away with me, come allow me to restore and rebuild these walls and these ancient ruins of your heart, and let me fill in the holes, because I'm about to do something so great and grand and amazing, and I want to fill it with my, just come downpour upon you, and I want you to be able to contain it and hold it, so that nothing is getting in and nothing is coming out that needs to stay in,
right?
And so there was all of that, and then on top of it, the Lord was also talking about releasing from bondage, which is the number 18, and all last week was week 18 of the pregnancy process and the promise process that we're in. And
that was Act 1, Scene 3.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so it's just been like God has, in the midst of all of this, talking about going up the mountain and all of that, he's also talking about breaking bonds and bondages and anything in our heart that keep us bound up and tied up. And he's like, I'm releasing this so you can have the full freedom to be who you are, to experience me. A lot of times that's really what the Lord's doing. He's like, I'm breaking this off so you can experience the fullness of me,
right,
and my heart. Because if you're bound up, you can't fully embrace what I'm doing and how I'm moving, because you've got certain limits on things, and God's like, I'm taking the limits off. And so he's been doing that as well. And I'm trying to think what else. And there's just so much that the Lord has been doing and sharing. But another thing that he's really paired with this mountain time is fire.
Oh, yes.
And he's been giving us
we've been camping
pictures.
Around the fire the whole time.
We really have, of being just at this campfire with the Lord, worshiping him. And that's really where the worship has come in. I can't.
Come in. Who that? Come in.
Has come in, and he, we have this. We just have these worship songs that we do for, we just have a whole playlist of worship songs. But
you can actually see it if you look at our playlists.
There's
you
just
can
a
see
whole
like
bunch.
the worship songs. We got like about almost 300 of them in there.
And
probably more than that.
But a lot of times throughout this entire journey, God has used certain worship songs for certain times, and then he'll introduce new ones as he's moving, and it really has been amazing. It's like we've had a soundtrack to our entire journey. And so at the beginning, when we were at the beginning of this play, so 3 weeks ago, basically, we got the song Rattle, and that was just like, God was like, this is the song for right now. And then the next week we still had the song Rattle, but then he added another song, and so we had those two songs, Man of Your Word, and it was just like, all right, both these songs are going, and we're like, wow, okay, this is what the songs of the play that he has going on right now. And then but then last week God just started putting more songs out, and they were all new and all new worship songs for us. So just like Highest Praise was, I think, one of the first one, or Put on the Garments of Praise, and all this stuff. But then God was like, these are like logs for your fire. And I just felt it was like he was just, all right, we got a couple logs. When you start a fire, you start with a few logs, and you let those kind of catch on fire, get going before you add more to it, so you don't snuff the fire out. But then this last week, literally, we got 11 new songs. Like, these are songs we've never had on our worship list before. That 11 new songs that God just added, and I felt like the Lord was like, okay, now we got a real good fire going. And it was just this, like,
it was really cool.
And so it was just the fire.
And all of the lyrics were really speaking to right where we were at. about
all of them.
faith and hope and believing God for greater things, and the enemy's only got smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So we're going to give you the highest praise. And
yeah.
Just so much was just like, wow, this is right where we're at, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. And so I just thought it was amazing because here we are with all these worship songs, and they really are just warming our hearts, warming us as we continue to just, sing praises to the Lord. And but then the Lord was also talking about the fire of our faith. And just he's just stoking the fire of faith in our hearts.
Was that the Luke 12:49?
Yeah. And but then just especially yesterday, let's see, what is today? Tuesday or Monday?
Today's Tuesday.
Tuesday. So since Sunday, the Lord really has been speaking faith. And about the fire and the flame of faith in our heart, and how,
which makes sense because this is week 19.
Week 19, and that's about faith
Act
and
1,
hearing.
Scene 4, coming at you.
And and I know this is really, it's not something that it's like, ooh, we're trying to make this fit. It's just how the Lord has been moving.
I mean, come on, for those who know our journey, they know we don't do that anyway.
No.
I mean, it's good to know. It's good to say that for new people, but it's like we just don't. This is just the way it is. It's like you want to know the Lord, you just step in and see what the water's like. Yeah. Oh, this is what you're like, Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just been kind of, just kind of interesting, especially, particularly since week 14. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and now 19 God has just really lined those up to say, like, what I'm doing, like, this week, it's just been so much about faith. And of course, it's, God is always, he's moving. He's not confined to, well, Lord, you can only do this certain topic, this, or something like that. Yeah. But he's like, hey, I'm sowing this into you. And I think if anything, it's like, hey, I want you to remember. I want you to remember what I'm doing, and I'm going to make it really easy. Because on week 19, you're going to remember that it was all about faith. And this is what I did in that week of faith. Oh, week 18, that's like about removing bondages. Remember how I was speaking, removing, and look what I did that week. And so I think that's part of it, part of this time of restoration. Like, God's like, I want you to really remember. And so I'm going to put markers in place that you remember what I've done. And that it would just be so clear.
Almost like memorial stones.
Yeah, very much like that. And it's like, so that when later on, when you're going back through, you'll just be like, oh yeah, I remember in this week, this is what he did. Remember in that week, that's what he did. Yeah. And so they really are markers. And it really started right before when just that week 14, that second trimester, and just like, God's like, this is what I'm doing now. And you're going to remember the start of the play. You're going to remember, all of those things.
And how each week correlates to what the prophetic number actually means.
Yeah.
Because 14 was a release. That's when we went into the new room that we were promised to be in. 15, week 15, that's when it was like, oh, here comes a new direction. We're coming out of the room.
Yeah.
Because of the whole COVID-19 thing. Week 16 was love, and that's where we were feeling the flutter, and we got this additional room, which is still half price. Yeah. And it's like, it just been all going together, Week 17, victory. Well, with victory comes the grand exposure. Yeah. It's like, don't focus on the exposure, focus on the victory that the exposure is inviting you to. Yeah. But the exposure feels like terrible, for picking a good word there. But it's like they've all kind of matched up and correlated.
Yeah, week 17. It's focus on God's forthcoming accomplishments.
Yes, exactly. Put my forthcoming accomplishments in context.
Yeah. And so it's just been really amazing. I feel like this is just such like an overview of what the Lord has been doing. But yeah, so he's just been really speaking about the flame of fire and faith. It's like there's the faith of that God has. And so I just think it's so funny. It's like we're on the mountain, God's speaking about faith, and then of course as it's also like, so it's by faith that the mountains move. So I just love that picture, that it's like, here you are up on the mountain, and I'm speaking to you about faith. I'm speaking to you about, just so many amazing things. And yet it's like, it's by your faith that the mountain in your life is going to be removed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
What else did you have to share? I feel like I painted the overview, but no.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of go back to the whole release from bondage stuff, because that was huge this week. Now, and I want to say some things that I believe, if you receive them, if you really open your heart and hear from the Lord, let the Spirit lead, that you will be set free as well. Because what God did for us in this release of bondage week, and it was more than just that. I feel like, honestly, the release from bondage was the subtext of the week. It wasn't the primary thing. But it was like underneath. It's the foundation of everything I'm doing, and it's just been amazing. I mean, and so just work with me here,
can I say something real quick
sure.
about that? I really felt like you said,
you're
it was
interrupting?
kind of. I know. So it was this subcontext.
You need to do that more often.
It was this, like you were saying, the subcontext of the bondage.
Subtext?
Yeah, that's you. So, but I really felt like God was saying, like,
I love it.
Because he was calling us up to the mountain, and I felt like God was saying, like, yes, by you coming up to the mountain to worship me and focus on me, he was just going to let, like, chains fall off.
Yes.
And so that's really what was happening, and we just experienced that. It was just
like they were both going on at the same time.
Yeah.
This mountain seemed to be the whole thing, meeting the Lord on the mountain, and just that 40 days of like Moses on the mountain, the whole number 40, and the time of testing and being here for 40 days. But it's like, as you're doing that, the stuff's coming off.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, did I take it back from you?
Yeah, that's all right.
Took it. You didn't even fumble. I just went and grabbed it out your hand, start running.
That's all right.
Devin, you're not supposed to do that. That's against the rules. Oh, I'm sorry. You know who you're playing with, right? No, but yeah, so life with the Lord, not just life on the mountain, as the title of this video suggests, but life with the Lord is all about growth and change and development. And he cannot work on everything all at once.
Yeah.
So as you're walking with the Lord, there's going to be some things that maybe you think and believe that aren't right, but he's not going to address them right away. And it may be a couple years before he's like, hey, I'm going to address that now. Because now you're at a time of maturity in the process where you can handle it without it devastating you or crushing you to pieces. You know what I'm saying?
It's the wheat and the darnel.
Yep. And so as we've gone on through this journey, from the very beginning, the Lord was really stretching us. And I mean, if you look at some of those earlier videos, shoot, you think I interrupt now? Look at some of them other videos. Seriously, man. I've come a long way. Get yourself some context, some sub-context.
That's one of those issues that we're not touching on, but we will some point.
Oh, your wordings? Or what are you talking about?
Your interruptus.
Oh, the interruptus. Oh, that's going to take some fire from heaven. But in the beginning, God was just doing so much in 2017.
Yeah.
And that's when he began the Hosea chapter 6, verses 1 and 2 stuff about the stripping and the tearing down, and the Jeremiah 1:10 about the overthrowing and just he was doing a lot of renovation in our heart. And so as he was stretching our faith to believe for things that seemed astronomically crazy, like we would need to know Bill Gates in order to get some of this stuff to happen. It's like, no, you don't need to know him. You know me. Anyway, but it was a big stretch at the time, but we were willing to just go in and get stretched and do some crazy stuff and step out and do these things, right? Well, in the midst of that, God would he put it on our heart to just like believe for the kind of home that we want, right? And so we began by faith. We began looking and searching, and then we found this one particular home. So many of the homes that you find on Zillow and Realtor.com and all these places, they just don't fit. They're like, some of them are like 8 out of 10, but you don't ever find any 10 out of 10s, right? We went for months, right?
Yeah.
And then finally we found this one home that was like a 10 out of 10, basically. Or maybe a 9.3 out of 10.
Yeah.
But, because not every house is perfect, you know, but the bottom line is we found this one house and we're like, yes, this is it. This is it. And so you guys have heard us talk about that specific house. I think in the early days, I think we actually gave the address, but I can't go back and find that video and delete it just because it's got an address. I don't care. But so we found this one specific house, and we've talked about it a lot, and we're just like, yes, we're believing the Lord for that house. We're believing the Lord for that house. And so, and we've got so much journey and investment in that home, like 3 years worth, I think, you know, and just that particular house. Well, this past week, it was almost as if the Lord released us from that. You know, it's hard to talk about because there's so much story involved, but he just released us from, not from believing for the desire to be fulfilled, but what I'm talking about here, we'll call it placeholders, right? That home just represented a symbol or a sign or a placeholder for the desire of our heart. And so when the Lord removed that and said, well, you don't necessarily need to be in that home. That home's been off the market for almost 2 years anyway. You know, you don't know what conditions in, whatever, but it was a placeholder for our faith. And our faith had grown to such a degree that he could remove that placeholder without it destroying our desire, without it destroying our heart. Because, and now listen, I'm just going to use this as one example, because God did this a lot last week as far as like removing placeholders. So you have a desire. Let's say the desire is a dash in a sentence. Well, we take something and we put it in that dash, kind of like Mad Libs, where you just like do all these come up with all these weird sentences because you're throwing all these weird words out there. But it's like we take that and we put it as a placeholder, and our whole heart grows roots into that placeholder. And so when you pull it out, it's almost like pulling out a tooth. It's not even loose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or even if it's a little loose, you pull it out, it's going to be lots of pain and blood. Well, what's like the Lord did that for us. He took it out, but he was like, see, but the desire is still there. And the Lord really was like, this is me. What morning was that? I forget what morning it was.
I think Saturday.
Yeah. It's because it was very recent, and it was just like, no, this is me. And I really felt like, no, I think this is the Lord. You know, because the problem is what was so great about it is that, like, a lot of times our hearts will get attached to a certain thing. And then that certain thing or that certain event or that certain person, that's a huge one.
Huge. That's,
I think, the number one spice.
Yeah.
That one is, oh, that's the one I'm going to marry. And then they go and get engaged and you're crushed. It's like, no. Okay, that maybe didn't work out or whatever. That particular certain thing didn't work out, but the desire is still there, right? Well, yeah, and I'm going to fulfill the desire, correct? That's in the Word. You can't erase that. That's just the truth, right? It's like, yeah, and so we began to look. It was fun, actually.
Yeah.
It wasn't stressful. It was fun. We're like, whoa, we're on this journey again to find things. And I tell you what, we found stuff in this area, in the area that we want. See, because the house that we were believing for is in an area that we've never been.
Yeah.
When we first got here, that's where we stayed. And then once we left on our Nashville journey and our tour, we've never been back there.
Nope.
Never been back there. We've always been in this particular area. The Cool Springs area. The Cool Springs. Cool Springs. And we've just been in this particular area. And it's just like God's called us to this particular area. And we just kind of discovered that recently. Just like, man, this really is the area that God's called us to. You know, you can say Nashville, and you can say some of the surrounding areas, but we've been in this place almost the whole time, this area. And God's almost like, hey, okay, you're waking up to that, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's time to. It's not like we were missing something before. It's just like, we're seeing that. And so we were able to see, and some of the stuff that we found, we went and we looked at it, and it was like way more awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Way more awesome than that placeholder that we had. You know, it was way more awesome. So it's like the same thing, and the Lord did the same thing with me because I like supercars. And long story short, He was like, I've never told you that you had to get a specific car. I'm just saying I don't have a problem with you getting that because that's the desire of your heart. You can have that. That's another. Let's just put that to the side. But it's the same thing with like relationships. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, you know, you have your heart. I was there. I was there for 9 years. There's a video on that. I don't know if you can find it, but it's like I was there for 9 years believing the Lord for this one specific girl. And it just wasn't happening. It was like it never happened. Mm-hmm. Relationship, even friendship, even communication never happened. But I was just believing God for it. It's going to come through. It's going to happen because it's the Lord. And God's like, no, listen. You found someone that fits the mold. You found someone that is a good placeholder, a symbol for what you're looking for, but that particular person is not available. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, the Lord spoke, so no, actually the Lord didn't speak. You know, a lot of times the Lord will share His heart, and that's what He's doing. Mm-hmm. He's sharing His heart, and you have to listen to His heart. And His heart is, for us this past week, it's like He took all these placeholders off. Because those placeholders were kind of holding us in bondage to like, this is what has to happen. And it's like, hey, Peter, here's the sheet of unclean animals, rise up and kill and eat. No, Lord, I can't do that. You said I can't do, wait a minute. Now you're telling me I can. I'm confused. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I am really confused. And that's how the Lord does it. Yeah. He shakes you up. It's like, if I made the rule, can't I break the rule also? Mm-hmm. And it's like, he's really not breaking the rule. No. He's just breaking those concrete walls that have been set up in our hearts that tell us this is the Lord, it's the only way, this is the way. You know what I mean? He's breaking and shaking those prison foundations. And that's literally what He told us He was going to be doing.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm going to be just come up the mountain, praise me, and I'm going to be shaking those foundations. Mm-hmm. So what the Lord is saying is like, I just want you to have the desire of your heart. And you're at a time of maturity and you're a place where you're ready for that. You're ready to receive that. But you got to know, you've got to have these, there comes the 444 moments, you've got to have these things removed that you think this is the Lord. Because if you think in your head, concreting it in your head that this is the Lord, well, to move off of that, your heart says, well, that's disobedience. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what Peter was dealing with in the vision of the unclean animals. Mm-hmm. And he said it happened to him 3 times. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? It happened to him 3 times. 3 times meaning it was the Lord. It was a confirmation. It was the ultimate of ultimate confirmations that this is the Lord, man.
Yeah.
And we were really feeling all this past week about just the shaking of the prisons, and those prisons are in your mind, things that you think are the Lord that aren't the Lord but kind of are the Lord, because the deal is your placeholder is set on top of what is the Lord. But if you take the placeholder away, the desire for that, whatever it is, the restoration of marriage, your kids to return and know the Lord, all those different things that the Lord's put on your heart to believe for, that's still intact. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like the 9-year girl. You know, once I let her go, man, I don't remember how long it was, but the Lord jumped on it right away, and He was like, all right, come on, let's pursue, let's go this direction. Mm-hmm. And about 9 months later, I met this one, holla. And it was so awesome. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like, I think a lot of the church, and even in church history, the human heart and the mind living in this dark world and the way things are, we want to set up a structure. We want the 1, 2, 3, 7 steps. We want those walls. We want to know what we can do, what we can't do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. We want all those things in place because that makes us feel comfortable. And a lot of times so then you develop an entire culture like that, and you develop entire churches like that, and then you develop entire generations like that actually don't know anything different. And so then to tear down those walls of how things are from the Lord, it's like, it's devastating. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's heart ripping. It's just like you're sinning against God. It's like when a Christian someone who's Muslim becomes Christian, when they really give their heart to the Lord, it's like it's a ripple through the whole family, and it tears things up, because it's like, well, no, this is not the way. You know, so when Jesus comes on the scene and he starts saying, this is not the way, let me show you the way, he becomes a big enemy to those who are dogmatically attached to the structure, and that's what happens to our hearts. God begins to move things, and we realize, like, well, the bottom line is that's the whole point of the maturity process, and just really following the Lord wherever he goes, and just listening to him and trusting him in the process. We made videos about this last year in 2019, a lot of them. Trust the Lord in the process. He knows what he's doing. And it's like, we felt such a great sense of release and freedom when those things were taken off. There was that initial knee-jerk hit of like, oh no, maybe we've been believing the wrong stuff this whole time. Man, no, get out of here. No, don't even see you. You can last about 5 seconds. Bye. You know, it's like, no, it's totally the Lord. And then we felt such a great sense of freedom and a kind of a burst of hope and life, and just like, I don't know, it was just really cool. And that's kind of what the freedom and peace of God does when he releases something. Sometimes we're held in bondage by what we're calling placeholders, when it's like, let God remove the placeholder, and you'll find that the desire is still there, and he will fulfill the desire, and he will fulfill it with what you actually want. Because see, even if we were to get the money, like what would happen in 2018 with the corporation, you know, even if we were to get the money and with that structure in mind, even if we didn't necessarily, even if we had grown to the place, and we had grown to the place where we're like, well, we actually don't like that about the house anymore, and we don't like this and this, maybe I don't like that, be different, but it's the Lord, so we have to go. We get the money, that's exactly what we're going to do. You know, and of course God is God. He's big. He's going to be like, no, this isn't what I want you to do. This is what I want you to,
well,
you know. And
but we were talking about too how it's like, the reason why is God taking all of this off now? Well, it's because he's preparing us to run. This is a year of running with the Lord. And so
to run into the desires you have,
you know, by taking off all the shackles, you're able to, when it's time and he opens those gates, and, you know, like a horse, you know, it's like the gates open, they're going. They're not, oh, wait, I got to still get the, you know, ankle weights off.
You're
and
not
this
bound
off
by, oh, we have to go into that house, and we have to get this kind of vehicle, and we have to have this kind of schedule, and we have to have this kind of life.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's bondage.
And so you're really just free to go forward, which is why the Lord is doing this now.
Yes.
He's like, which is also kind of one of those like, whoa, God is doing this now.
Now, of all times, to
like
be doing
like,
this
hey,
now.
Let's take this off, you know, get ready.
What are you getting ready to do?
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Can we do it now?
Yeah.
Or is there still more stuff? Although we are going to be up on this mountain for 40 days. I don't know when the 40 days ends, honestly. Do you? I don't know when
you think it's a full 40 days?
I do.
I don't know.
This might be an editing moment. Oh, you think it might be less than 40 days?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a full 40 days.
Oh, maybe I'm just thinking of the whole promise process being a full 40 weeks.
I think yeah. I don't think we're going to be on the mountain for 40 days.
Oh, okay. So, well, to be continued.
And so I also wanted to just share, I think, a picture that God gave to me in regards to just the placeholders. Because, you know, like we said, God really, and it was him. I believe, like, you know, he's like, hey, you have this desire, and I'm putting a placeholder on it to keep this desire alive. And I had this picture of really long, you know, like long time ago when they had to carry like light with them but it was this like, think of like black iron, and it was like shaped like this, and then there was this basically.
So it's kind of cane shaped.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was like this black, like kind of looked like a cage that held the desire, the light. And I really felt like God was like, you've been carrying, and we had a couple of them, and it was just like, you're carrying these desires with you, and they've been with you this whole journey. And I felt like the Lord was saying, but we've been carrying them this whole time, and now that we're up on this mountain, and it's like now the Lord's like, it's time for those to come out. You've carried it this whole time, and He needed us to carry it. He needed it to be there with us, and if He had not put it in there, that it could have been all over the place. It just wouldn't. I don't know. It wouldn't be the same. But I felt like I saw this vision of just the Lord. He's opening those cages. He took out the desires, and He put them in the fire.
Oh, that's right.
But it was like, because they've been placed in the fire, there is just this, it's just gaining, it's like, whoa, look at, I really think, when I first saw it, I was thinking something different, but as I've like kind of processed with the Lord, I really feel like it's almost like those desires are like a sweet spice, and He's thrown the spice into the fire, which actually releases the scent. It makes it greater than what it ever was, because the flame is mixing with it, and I think that there's just this kindling that the Lord is doing with the desires of our hearts. And
because are we still talking about the fire being the praise,
yeah,
prayer, and just giving our hearts to the Lord, and
it's like it just gets mixed in there, and it just becomes a sweet aroma. But also in that, God's like, by me releasing that, it just opens you up. It really just allows you to just fully just experience, and so it's like with like a scent or a smell, like certain ones, when they are put on flames, it's like that releases all of the
and then the smell
fullness
goes
of
everywhere.
It. And so I really feel like that's kind of what the Lord is doing with the desires. He's like, you've been carrying them because I've needed to just keep that with you. Hold on to it. But this is the time now for it to be released, for me to take it out, and for just that sweet aroma to just fill the air and fill the place.
And then you're not bound by a very specific kind of desire. Well, I have to have a red Mazda with a white interior type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. That is a random example.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. But I also felt like, in a lot of ways that it really symbolizes with Abraham. He went up on the mountain, and God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, and He literally bound Isaac up. It was his desire, and He put it down. Isaac represented like the promise. It was the desire of his heart.
It was. But
then ultimately, God was just like, wow, Abraham, whoa, you did everything I've asked. You've not withheld your own son, which of course is a picture for us prophesying what Jesus would do, what God did for us. But I think also that there is just this symbolism as well of just like, what did God ultimately do there? He released the desire back to Abraham, and just like there's like a fullness there, I feel like, and it's almost like, I think with just the placing the desires into just the fires of worship and praise, and just it's like God's like, I'm releasing this sweet aroma. And
well, it was such a it was such an act of trust.
Yes.
Because I mean, it's. I don't know what the theologians all say or agree upon, but he was definitely an adult by that time. He wasn't some little 10-year-old boy.
No.
Like we think. He was an adult, and so even Isaac himself was coming along. He was trusting in his father.
Yeah.
And his father was trusting in God. It was such a trust. It's like, okay, Lord, I know this is you, so I would rather obey you than hold on to the desires and promises that you've spoken over my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that's just such a great act of trust. Like, God, this is what you promised, and it seems like you fulfilled the promise for a very long time now.
Yeah.
But if this is what you're telling me to do, okay, you must have some different plan, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
By that time, Abraham was like, I totally trust you. Doesn't mean that he wasn't hurting and grieving through the whole process. And his soul was full of questions. He had question factories just going on in his heart, I'm sure. But he's like, I'm going to trust you. And that's when the Lord was like, oh, you're complete.
Yeah.
You are 100% complete in your trust in me. Now here's the provision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what's happened for us. So now here's the provision. I'm kidding. I should stop joking like that, although it's kind of funny. But anyway, but seriously, it's like there then the lamb appeared, caught in the thicket, you know. And I was like, oh, there you go. The Lord provides. He will see to it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you don't have to have this specific desire.
Yeah.
It's the specific thing is just a forming of what your desire is. But if that specific thing is taken away or it doesn't work out or whatever, the desire's still there. You know, it's like, oh, I got this guy. I'm really connecting with him. Oh, but it's not working out. That's fine. You still have a desire to be married. That's still there. God is a fulfiller of the desires, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just a very huge, like, awesome, freeing thing for us. Something that we would normally consider maybe utterly devastating.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, it was 100% totally freeing for us. And it's like now we're free to just continue to look. And there's stuff available right now that was not available 3 years ago.
No.
It just wasn't there. We were very familiar with all those homes. And it's just like now so much different stuff is available. And it's like God knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all that we have for you guys. And I do pray that you are greatly encouraged by what the Lord is doing.
And set free.
Yes, and set free. You know, if you have your own placeholders that God has put in your life. And I think that was actually one thing that was like really, I think, so encouraging was with that vision, because I really felt like I was like, don't worry about like the placeholder itself. It's like I actually put that there.
Yeah.
And so there are times when God's like, I'm gonna put a placeholder there because we've got a lot of journeying to do, and I know that I need to put that in place so that we can walk through this journey together.
That's right. So it's not always a Darnell situation or a Tears situation. Sometimes it's like God put that there for that reason.
Yeah.
You know?
And we've experienced that actually multiple times just in this journey alone of God saying like, I'm putting you in these places so you can learn, so there's like a growth, but then I'm going to take you out. And to realize that there are times where it's like you might, well, did we do something wrong, Lord? Like what happened?
Maybe we weren't led by the Spirit for that.
And he's like, oh no, you heard me. But what I'm doing is for your good. And so I'm bringing you into these places where I do have placeholders, or I do have just circumstances and people that I've brought in for a time, and then I'm going to release you from it. And there is just a growth and a change that occurs because of that. And so I was just like, wow, Lord, thank you for that, because, you know, it would just have been so different, you know, because I think the reason the Lord, especially for us, you know, you're showing us like, I put this placeholder and put it on your heart because then you could carry it with you. And if it wasn't there, it might have gotten
like a flame of hope.
It might have gotten scattered. It might have gotten lost along the way. And he's like, it's not. I don't want that to happen. I'm actually saving this. This is a sweet aroma. And so now, though, is the time for me to bring it out. Yeah. Now's the time for me to just throw it on the fire and have just this sweet scent, and it will be just a great joy to you. And so it was just really awesome that God was gracious enough to just give that picture or vision. I always say pictures because it literally, like, I can picture it in my mind.
Well, that's what a vision is.
But that's a vision, you know, you see it in front of you. But yeah, so we just pray that this really just blesses you guys, that you would just see the hand of God in your own life and how He is just orchestrating. And yeah, so until next time, guys.
Love you guys very much.
We appreciate all of you, and we will see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.